everyone. Good to meet you all. I know I'm going to get the stop sign, so I know there's going to be slides of mine that are going to get cut off, but it was really great listening to Jason's opening presentation, because even though he is the Director of MLA, I don't get to see him present that often, and it did reinvigorate my excitement of working in a fairly compliance-based area that's not the most exciting one to work in. But before I... actually, what am I supposed to have done here? Before I get started, and I wish I'd thought of giving this question to be on the Slido, but I'm going to have to ask it the old-fashioned way and get you to put your hands up. So you've been given a little bit of information just then by Jodie, and also there's some in the booklet. But I'd just like you to put your hands up if you feel confident in explaining who Integrity Systems Company is and what we exactly do. Okay, there's a couple. So this is, I'll be talking about this because Integrity Systems Company, when I used to work for DAF, used to revert back to saying I was working for the DPI because everyone knew what that was, but I've never come across a brick wall like when you say you work for Integrity Systems Company, and even my husband still can't actually tell people who I work for. So the fact that there's a couple of people in the room that know who Integrity Systems Company is a good start. So obviously I'm going to be talking about that, talking about the importance of the red meat integrity system, the programs that make up the system, and what that means for your clients, and then what is coming in the next year in the area of the NVD. So yes, as we mentioned, we are a fully owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, and I'm sure you're all aware that MLA has a remit of what they have to spend their money on, and that is to invest in research, development, adoption and marketing, and everything that they invest in has to result in increased producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. So as a subsidiary of MLA, we do have a fairly small window of what we work on. Obviously they work across the whole spectrum, but we work in this specific area, and that is focusing on that underpinning system that does mean that our product does remain at the forefront of demand, consumers and customers around the world. And it was exciting, listening to Jason's talk about, that huge number of research reports that have been created, and he said, let's bring it down to those key impact things, and I have heard him say that speech a few times. That traceability, and I know for a lot of producers, traceability and insurance is just a pain, they do view it as a thing they have to do, they're not excited about it. But when you put it into that big picture perspective of what does that actually give you in terms of where your product is marketed to, and who has confidence in your product, that it's a safe, it's ethically produced, all those kinds of things, it really is a big, huge achievement for the industry to have done that. And I've got plenty of producer friends who hate NLIS with a passion. They still talk to me even though I work for ISC. But it is. I'm really glad that he spoke about that, because it is one of those key investments that give us the position that we're in today. The other part of ISC that probably doesn't get a lot of airtime, and I'm not going to talk about it today, it's not my area that I have a lot of expertise in, is the data. We have so much data collated, just the NLIS database alone, but all of that data and information, the way that it can be linked. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Livestock Data Link program. It's probably a lot more common in the southern states, but that is linking information from the carcass, from processing, disease and defect. It's this tool that allows people that breed but don't ever consign to a processor to actually have a look and see how their carcasses went. The data pools that are out there, and linking those data pools and bringing them together to bring new value to the industry is where ISC is looking to invest for innovation. So that's the other part of what we do. So why is it so important? Just reiterating some of those things that Jason said. We're a really important industry. We employ a lot of people, support a lot of businesses and sell into a lot of markets. And those key things of food safety, quality and traceability, they are still the key things that motivate people to make that choice over, a product they're going to spend that bit extra on. So even though we sort of take it for granted, it becomes very complacent, we're the best, whatever, we need to keep working at it because it can be lost. So we have undertaken, ISC just recently undertook some research looking at how is the Australian integrity system, where do we sit in comparison to the rest of the world, and what sort of perceptions do our key customers have about how we manage our food safety. And we still are at the forefront, but we're not miles ahead like we used to be. There's a lot of other countries out there that have really adopted innovative systems and that are really recognise that this is an important thing that underpins their product. So we're not the world leader by miles. We're still up there, but we can't just, say, oh, well, we're good enough. We'll just stick with what we're doing. So we really do need to keep making sure that the quality and the safety of our product is always going to put us there, because we don't want to be that, we can't produce lots of tonnes for low cost. That's not our game. As Jason was saying, we've got to be at that forefront. So Integrity Systems Company, it is a system, and that's probably a real shift in trying to get producers to understand that these programs that they've known about for ages, LPA, NLIS, NVDs, the way they think about them, the way they've probably seen them, the way that they're in their minds, is not all together in one system. So that's been a real journey, and since I've started working for ISC, it's really trying to get that mindset to people understand these programs work together. And it is difficult because, some of it's managed through different areas. The states manage NLIS, it's legislated, LPA's audited by AusMeet. There's all these acronyms, all these, different organisations involved. And to get people to understand how important it is and how it all gels together has been a real journey. But there are some key things that link those programs together, and they are property identification codes, which, very interestingly, listening to Jason saying, the mapping tool, we went through all that in grazing BMP, and it's definitely true. People not actually having good data about where their actual address is totally true. The NVD and the record keeping, so they're the three things that link the system together. So in terms of, there wasn't many people that put their hand up that knew about ISC. That's just a reflection of reality. Since we've only been around since 2016, but we've been doing this producer awareness survey since 2018, and we have improved people's understanding of who we are and what we do. But the great thing about being here is that, we've got a great, huge communication network. We have 180,000 people that receive our newsletter monthly. I think Future Beef is, up there as well. And that's a great channel. But we all know producers, you can send them a lot of emails and they won't read that many of them. So the way that producers respond is to face-to-face. They like to talk to someone, and I'm glad I'm here because you guys are the ones that actually get out there and talk to people. That nothing is ever going to make up for getting the message out as to having boots on the ground. And we just don't have boots on the ground. And as a past extension officer, that's very frustrating at times. But yeah, the information I'm going to give you, I'm hoping that you in some ways might be able to pass on. The other thing about LPA, I guess, you only have to do your accreditation every 3 years. So 3 years is a long time if you don't really engage with the program in between. So there's that sort of bit of knowledge, and then it wanes off, and then 3 years later, like, what's all this stuff I've got to do again? So yeah, it is a problem that we have. So the tagline for ISC is "Stand by what you sell," and it's really all about getting producers to take that responsibility and link what they do on farm to that global picture of their product being one of the best in the world. So I put on the tables this little pamphlet, which we worked pretty hard on trying to summarise the two programs and how they come together. And we are going to share, I think we did it after the last livestock updates, Joe. I think we're going to share some resources afterwards, and I am going to send you a link to a video called "Can You Stand By What You Sell?" And if you wanted to get a bit of a better understanding about this, it's all based on this diagram. So it just shows people how the two programs work together. But they are linked by PICs, and that's a key thing. So as a livestock advisor, it's really important that you understand the PIC system. Like, every state has their own register. There is no national PIC register apart from the fact that it's in the NLIS system. So every state has their own way of managing PICs, and then they have their own software and their own systems for managing that, and the NLIS system has to be able to talk to every single one of those, pull it all together, And it works 90% of the time, like there's always little glitches, but that is the only place that every pick, every red meat producing place in Australia is connected, is through that NLIS register. So I think, if you're working with producers and things like going EU, wanting to go organic, wanting to split up picks, wanting to amalgamate picks, I think it's a good thing to know and understand what is available in your state, because it's different in every state. And picks are that key sort of identifier that brings the two programs together. The middle point there that brings them together is the NVD, and a lot of people don't realise the NVD is where the traceability from the tags and the transfer is actually married to the food safety declaration that they make by ticking those boxes and signing on the NVD. So if you're an accredited LPA producer, you agree that you will reference the NVD number when you do that transfer. And in any kind of situation where they're looking back to see what's the history of these animals going through this supply chain, that's where the food safety and the traceability are linked together. And obviously the record keeping is what the last sort of linkage, and a lot of producers are surprised to learn that NLIS is part of your LPA audit. So if your NLIS account is a mess, guess what they're going to be looking at when they do their LPA audit? They're going to be saying, well, what's this? You've got your NBD book here, you've said you've brought animals on, there's no transfer. So these things are all part of your LPA accreditation. So the other little bit of information I put on the table is just this little pamphlet that talks about how to create a MyMLA account. So I won't ask you to put your hands up, but not everyone has heard about MyMLA, but from 1 July this year, if you don't have a MyMLA account, you can't access your LPA account. Now, MyMLA has been around for about 4 or 5 years, and we've really pushed it because it's this move towards creating a single platform, making things easier for people, one username, one password. At the moment, we still do have the separate platforms, but that is the goal, is to get to this one integrity platform where you just do everything in the one place. But you can't access your LPA account now without having created a MyMLA, and I really hate it when producers find this out when they're trying to order an NVD book, or they're trying to do an ENVD in an emergency because the cattle are already on the truck, or the truck's at the yards, and they're like, this is extra step of stuff that they've got to do, and it just drives them mad. So if you're talking to producers, ask them, have they created their MyMLA account? If they've got multiple properties, it's great. They can link every pick. They can link their LPA, their NLIS, their MSA, their LDL if they're in that, and they just log on with one username and password and they can access the whole lot. So yeah, if you're talking to people, it's a really good thing to bring up. And I guess the question earlier, like, how do you get to that 40% of people that just don't interact with consultants, that don't interact with DPI? I was Extension Officer in 2016 at Charles Towers when the changes to LPA were brought out. It was also when the Yonis scheme was, the change to the Yonis management. We ran some workshops in the Charles Towers office, and we saw people we had never seen before, because they had to come in, because they have to do this. This is stuff they have to do. So that's one little key for you. They have to do NLIS, they have to do LPA. If you're good at it, if you know about it, if you can help them, that can be your foot in the door. Okay, so getting into the nitty-gritty, what is LPA? It's a quality assurance program, and it is what you do that backs up those ticks. They're not just, oh yeah, we'll fill in the paperwork, it's done. All those ticks need to be backed up by what you do on farm and the records that you keep. So you've got to look after things like property risk assessment, your treatments, your fodder, how you prepare your animals for dispatch, the transactions and movements of your livestock, and the two ones that were added in 2016, biosecurity and animal welfare. Now, every single LPA accredited producer, which is 99% of producers, must have a biosecurity plan. That's another little key thing. If you have got a biosecurity plan, no, here I can help you do it. Well, where does what I do as a consultant cross over with LPA, and I can help you do some of that? We'll work on this, but I can help you with what you have to do. Animal welfare, the key that, the focus that Jason talked about in his presentation. Every LPA accredited producer should have read and have a copy of and know what it is of the animal standards and guidelines for their species. Ask them, do they know what it is? Have they read it? A lot of times Mum has, because she did the LPA accreditation. Talk to the people that are actually out there managing the livestock, wouldn't have a clue. And that's a really bad look for our industry. If you want to talk about the standards and guidelines, talk to Steve Benny. He had a lot to do with getting them involved in the process, and for about 7 years we talked about them in grazing BMP. And I got to the point where I felt like every producer knows this, but I am continually shocked when people say, I don't know what that is. What's that? Who agreed to that? I'm not agreeing to that. It's like, yes you are, you're LPA accredited. You've agreed that this is how you manage your livestock. You know, there's requirements in there around pain relief. You've agreed to that. That's how you manage your property. You've said you are. So please make sure with your clients that they understand and know what that is. So what do they need to do for LPA? They do need to definitely create their MyMLA account. They need to keep their details up to date. So like I said, you only do your accreditation every 3 years. If you miss the email that says your accreditation's due or you're getting audited, it's a bit of a big deal. So please make sure they keep their details up to date, do their accreditation and manage their property and livestock according to those requirements, and keep those records because that's what backs up what you say you're going to do. And prepare for an audit if you are requested. So record keeping for LPA, and here's a great, for advisors, whatever records you're wanting them to keep, if you can find that crossover, like I said, you can look at how can you incorporate some of the requirements that they need to do with what you want them to do to improve their productivity in their business. So we, as ISC, we provide templates for all the records, but they're not compulsory. They can keep their records however they want, as long as they can, produce them at an audit. But if they're looking for a start and you don't have, a system that you want them to adopt and you're wanting to help them, the templates have actually, this year was a big job. We revamped them all. So originally they were only available as a PDF, which you had to either buy the booklet or download the PDF, fill it in by hand. So now we've created PDF writable templates, and the big one I think that will help is Excel spreadsheets. So you can manipulate that, add stuff in, you can add your grazing charts, and you can do a whole heap of stuff with Excel, obviously, you would all know. So I think that is a big game changer for the LPA templates. So that's just an example of one of the new PDF writables, and the Excel spreadsheet is all available off the website. Another big thing that they did was make it available on the LPA account so that you can actually save all your records there. So you can log into your account, you can upload all your records that you would need if you were audited, or you can keep your records there. And the big ones that I suggest that they do keep there is their biosecurity plan and their property risk assessment. So they can use the Excel, they can use the templates, or we have now got this option of those two big ones is to complete them actually entirely online in their LPA account. So audits, the big message about audits is don't panic, and the whole thing about audits, it's not a point in time when you race around and get all of everything together, though I just heard a story of a very large producer who's doing that at the moment, flying down to the other property to get all the records in order for his LPA audit. That shouldn't be how it's done. They're the records you're using all the time, you're keeping them up to date, and when an audit comes, it's just ticking it off. NLIS, the three things, the pick, the tag, the movement. I just think in NLIS, it's all about data. It's the thing that goes with the animal. Let's capture every bit of information about that animal and tie it to that tag. It's just, if you want to weigh in, go with NLIS, because it's the law. They have to do it. If they're just putting a tag in before the animal leaves, they're getting zero value out of that apart from being compliant. So if you can work out how you can help them by getting their NLIS system and getting some more value out of that, then you'll be helping us and you'll be helping them. They need to keep their NLIS account details up to date if they have an account. It's not actually a requirement to have an account. A lot of people live in beautiful bliss, never get a notice because they don't have an NLIS account. That's fine until you get audited or something really goes wrong, you have no idea what's in your account. So if people don't have an NLIS account, I'd encourage them to get one. They need to order the tags, obviously, do the records, do the movement transfers. Check their records, check the records. Don't just leave it to the agent, it's not his responsibility. And if you can, get them to think about doing a PIC reconciliation. If they want to go EU, or if they are EU, they'll be needing to do this every year. And it's a huge job if they have never ever looked at their NLIS account. Once you've done it once, it's heaps easier. Sale yards and processors are responsible for doing the transfer. Check it. I've heard so many stories about them doing the transfer wrong. Check, even if the sale yard's done it, still check that they transferred the right cattle to your PIC, and that really matters if you're EU. Selling platforms like Auctions Plus, they don't do the transfer. A lot of people that buy through them for the first time just assume that they do the transfer. No, they don't. If you're the receiver, it's your responsibility. Check if your agent's doing it. If your agent is doing it, make sure they are. Ask for the upload ID. Check the upload ID. If the agent was transferring 52 head, make sure 52 head come onto your account. It's not rocket science. As I said, because all of those things, if you're checking as you go, you come to the audit, you're in a good place. Another big job we did this year was take some of those old tech tips that have been around since, 15 years, and try and update the main ones so that there's some really good tools and resources. So if you're wanting to search a PIC register, do a transfer, do a PIC reconciliation, do a transfer rollback, all of those kinds of things, we've got some really handy tools now. You can go to the ISC website and sort of narrow down what is it that you want to work on, what is it you need help with, rather than scrolling through 30 tech tips to work out which one's going to help you. NVD, as I said, it's where it all comes together. The big message is clear, complete, correct. So at the moment, we're this great, innovative, advanced, supply chain, and we still rely on this piece of paper that people don't fill in properly. So really, with NVDs, it's really important they've got to capture that information. So they need to maintain their accreditation so they can continue accessing it. It's a legal document. You must fill it out properly. You must have the records to back it up. There's so many examples. You talk to your local stocky. What a local sale yard manager? What are the NVD problems that are coming through? And yeah, people are really, they do get chased up, especially the processors. And if you've sent cattle to a processor and got the phone call, you have to drive in and fix this up. But sale yards and agents are less sort of vigilant, and then property transfers. So it's really important people are filling them in properly. The big one is ticking yes and no, because they have cattle of both types in that consignment. Some have HGP, some don't. Well, guess what? You can't tick yes and no. You need to separate those two lots of animals out, because that's a really important marketing information. The Enbd system, it's not just an ENVD, it's not just for ENVD, it's for all your consignment paperwork. So the feedlots have really jumped on this, because you can complete your NFAS, your MSA, your NVD, your health deck, and it just uses the same information. You don't fill out 4 lots of paperwork, you fill out 1, and it just auto-populates across all of those forms. They're really jumping on board. It's always the latest version, stored online. It's all your NVDs there for an audit, and you do get that discount on your accreditation if you agree to using ENVDs. ENVD adoption, so we released a new version of ENVD last year. Yep, so it was last year. So sorry, this graph only goes up to June, but it is sort of hovering around that 20,000 consignments a month, which is around 30% of all consignments are via ENVD. This is what it looks like on your LPA account. So you log in through MyMLA, you go to ENVD from your LPA account, and the great thing about ENVD is they're templates. So if you consign somewhere regularly, you might only have to change the date and the number of head. So this was presented at the ISC MLA updates, the webinar series that was recently held, and it's what's happening with ENVD coming up. So we're in the thick of it at the moment. We've got a producer testing group that are having a go at the app. Well, the app's almost ready to give to them, put in their hot little hands, and they can tell us everything about it. But the app is to combat the offline, so the lack of connectivity. So that's the huge amount of feedback we get back from people. ENVD is great, it's not for me, I don't have service. So with the app, we're at the first stage, so they'll be able to share a consignment from a producer to a transporter at the yards with no connection whatsoever. and then that transporter can then take that consignment and transfer it to the receiver at the other end, or they can log in through NLIS and get their consignment that way. So keep your eyes open. That's going to be talked about quite a lot in this coming year, and we'll be talking about sort of the feedback that we get from people using that app and releasing it in a staggered way throughout early 2022. So top tips for you to give to producers about selling livestock: ensure their record keeping is up to date, check that all their cattle have an NLIS tag, ensure the livestock are fit to load, that's a really important one, that all their NVDs are clear, complete and correct, and that their movements are recorded or they're checking those movements on the database. There is heaps of information on the ISC website and also on the LPA and NLIS websites. We put out that monthly newsletter. We're really focusing on practical tips. We call them integrity insights. So the one that came out, it's on doing a bit of round on social media at the moment, what to do if your livestock lose lifetime traceability. Now, if you're working with clients and lifetime traceability is important to them because it means extra dollars to them, then if you have a knowledge of how to help them, if they've bought in stock that don't have it, then you could be, getting some brownie points, and then they might want to work with you on the other things that you want to work with them on. We also released, we have a dedicated web page which I will share with you. So for anyone and all groups that are going out and as I said, we don't have boots on the ground. So we have a heap of resources that you can just jump on this website, put your name and address in and order it, and we'll send you, we've got flyers, brochures, signs, stuff that you can take with you to your presentations. So I'll provide you with that link and I'll encourage you to use it. And oh my God, I beat the bell.